All right, buckle up, everybody, because today's deep dive is a wild one. We're heading back to December 7th, 1987, Pacific Southwest Airlines Flight 1771.
PSA Flight 1771.
Supposed to be, just a normal flight, Los Angeles to San Francisco.
Right.
Ends up a total disaster. Everyone on board, all 43 people, gone.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
We're going off the Wikipedia article, and I got to tell you, this thing, it just gets weirder and weirder the more you read.
Oh, for sure.
You think it's a routine flight, then bam, revenge plot out of nowhere.
Absolutely. And that's what makes it so fascinating.
Oh, totally. Tragic, of course, but man, it really grabs you.
Definitely. Especially when you consider the cockpit voice recorder, the CVR.
Oh, yeah, the black box.
Exactly. No survivors. So the CVR, it's like our only window into what happened.
Captures all the sounds, conversations, alarms, everything.
Everything. And in this case, it's not just the crash itself, it's the lead up, the motive, the whole story.
Chilling stuff. Okay, so let's back it up a bit. Who was this guy, David Burke?
So David Burke, he was a former employee at U.S. Air.
Parent company of PSA, right?
Exactly. And get this, he got fired for stealing. Like a tiny amount of money.
No kidding.
Seriously, $70 from those little cocktail receipts they used to have on flights.
Wow.
Petty theft, they called it.
Mm-hmm.
But there were other rumors, too, about drug smuggling.
Hold on, drug smuggling?
Yeah, some people thought he was using his baggage handler job to move stuff.
No way!
It was never proven, but it adds another layer to the whole thing. Yeah.
For sure. So we've got a disgruntled ex-employee, history of stealing, maybe involved in something bigger.
Yeah, not a great combo.
Definitely not. And it gets worse. People who knew him said he had a temper, like violent even.
Oh, yeah, there were stories. This wasn't just some guy down on his luck. There was something dark there.
And it all came out of that flight, tragically.
And it did.
So he buys a ticket for this specific flight, knowing his old supervisor, Ray Thompson, is on board.
Yeah, and to get past security, he uses his old employee ID.
They didn't take it away when he was fired.
Nope. He even borrowed a gun from a coworker, a .44 Magnum. Can you believe that?
Seriously, so this was planned.
Meticulously planned. He knew the loopholes. He exploited them all.
Gets on the plane armed, ready to confront his boss. What happens next?
This is where the CVR gets really intense. Gunshots, a flight attendant's voice, you can hear her pleading with him.
Oh, man.
Then a struggle in the cockpit, just chaos. You can practically feel the panic.
Chilling. Must have been terrifying for everyone on board.
It was, and it happened so fast. Plane dives, out of control, slams into a hillside.
It's just like that.
Yeah, so much force that it basically disintegrated. Just a small crater left behind.
Total devastation. Did he say anything, like, before it all happened?
He did. Left a message on his girlfriend's answering machine.
Oh, wow.
Basically admitted to the whole thing, said he was angry at his old job, and then on the plane itself, he left a note.
A note?
On an air sickness bag addressed to his supervisor. Just a few words, but chilling. Signed it, I'm the problem.
Whoa. That's confession if I ever heard one.
It was. A final act of defiance. Twisted, but left no doubt about his intentions.
So, no question Burke was behind it. What about the investigation? What did they find?
Well, imagine the scene. Total wreckage. It was a nightmare. Only 11 passengers were ever identified.
It's hard to even imagine.
It was rough. But they did find pieces of the gun, the bullet casings, and the note.
All pointing to Burke.
Combined with the CVR, witness statements, it all added up. There was no other explanation.
Man, it's hard to grasp, Like, how could someone do something so awful? Especially to people he might have even known.
Yeah, it really makes you think.
And the families of the victims, I can't even imagine what they went through.
It's just heartbreaking. And the thing is, it was all preventable.
You're right. The investigation found some big problems with airport security back then.
Huge problems. For one, they didn't make fired employees turn in their IDs right away.
So Burke could still use his old ID to get through security.
Exactly. They basically just assumed nobody would do something like that.
That seems pretty naive now, looking back.
It does, doesn't it? And there was another issue, a big one.
What's that?
Flight crew, airport staff, they didn't have to go through the same checks as passengers.
No way.
Seriously. It was a huge loophole, and Burke, he used it.
So he walks right through security with a loaded gun, just because he used to work there.
Pretty much. It's a scary thought, right? One little gap in the system, and it leads to this.
Absolutely. The aviation industry must have been in a frenzy after this.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
What did they do?
Well, first off, new laws, bam, fired employees, ID gone immediately, no more waiting around.
Makes sense.
And they didn't stop there. Security for flight crews and everyone working at the airport, way tougher. Same rules as everyone else.
No more free passes.
Nope, not anymore.
It's sad that it took something this horrible to make them change, but I guess that's how it goes a lot of the time, doesn't it?
Yeah, react instead of prevent.
It makes you think, could we be doing more to stop workplace violence before it gets to this point?
It's a good question. Maybe better mental health support, better ways to deal with conflicts.
Yeah, something to think about.
Well, duh.
But for now, let's go back to the aftermath of the crash. What else happened?
Well, a lot of companies changed their travel policies, especially the ones with lots of executives.
I can see why. You mentioned Chevron, right? Their president was on that flight.
Jim Silla, yeah, huge loss for the company.
Definitely.
And it made other companies realize, what if all our top people are on the same plane?
Right, if something happens.
It's all over. So a lot of them changed their rules. No more flying together for the big bosses, separate flights, spread the risk.
It really puts things in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Life is fragile, that's for sure. But the changes to those policies, that's just one part of the story.
Right.
This whole thing, it still fascinates people today, even after all these years.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is?
Well, on one level, it's just a crazy story. Revenge, violence in a place you think is safe. But I think it also digs into something deeper, you know?
Like what?
Our fears about flying, about work, about the bad things people can do. We all feel angry sometimes. We all feel like we've been wronged.
Yeah, for sure.
And this story makes you think, what if those feelings take over? What could happen?
That's true. It could be anyone, even someone you think you know.
Exactly. But it's not just about the fear and the horror. It's about the people.
The victims.
Yeah, the 43 people who died that day, the families they left behind. We can't forget them.
Absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in the investigation and the security stuff, but this was a human tragedy, plain and simple.
It was. A lot of people suffered because of what happened.
It's a heavy story, that's for sure. Loss, anger, revenge, it's all there.
Mm.
And it makes you think not just about keeping planes safe, but about like what makes people do these things
For sure.
and how fragile life really is.
Definitely.
It really is. So many layers to it. It kind of makes you wonder, though, what's changed since then? Like, what's stopping this from happening again?
Well, those changes after Flight 1771, that was just the beginning,
Right.
really. Airport security, it's completely different now. Here in the U.S., everywhere, actually.
I mean, yeah, things are a lot stricter.
Oh, for sure. Huge shift after 9/11, especially. That's when the TSA came in.
The TSA, yeah.
And that was big. Suddenly, it's not just each airport doing its own thing. It's standardized, nationwide. Passenger screening, baggage checks, everything.
Right, the TSA, it's like part of the travel experience now, even if it does take forever sometimes.
I know, right? Those lines. But hey, it's all those layers of security, you know? They're looking for anything.
So X-ray machines, metal detectors, all that.
Exactly. And they're always improving the technology, too. Baggage screening's way more advanced now. And the TSA agents, they're trained to spot things, you know?
It sounds pretty thorough, but can we ever really be 100% sure something like Flight 1771 won't happen again?
That's the tough question, honestly. Probably not. No matter what you do, there's always a risk.
Because you can't predict what people will do.
Exactly. Some people, they'll always try to find a way around the rules, a way to exploit the system.
So it's not just about the technology, it's about the human element too.
Big time. And that's why they've been focusing more on behavior, you know, threat assessment, all that.
Like profiling.
Kind of. But it's more like they're trained to look for certain signs, things that seem off, try to catch things before they become a problem.
That makes sense. It's like a constant race, right? They make security better, then someone finds a new way to get past it.
Yeah, kind of. And that's why we got to be careful, you know? Can't just assume everything's fine.
So stay alert, report anything suspicious, all that.
Exactly. We all have a part to play in keeping things safe. It's a team effort.
Well said. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? This whole story of PSA Flight 1771, it really makes you think.
It does.
So as we wrap up, what's the one thing you want listeners to take away from this deep dive?
I think it's this. Yeah, technology and rules are important, but the human factor, that's what really matters.
Being aware, paying attention, trusting your gut.
Exactly. Look out for each other, be observant, and don't be afraid to speak up if something seems wrong.
Couldn't agree more. Well, folks, that's a wrap on our deep dive into the tragedy of Pacific Southwest Airlines Flight 1771. It's a reminder that life is precious and that we can never be too careful when it comes to safety and security. Let's all do our part to make sure something like this never happens again. Until next time, this is The Deep Dive, signing off.